the aspect of the streaming, like I'll tell you what, in terms of my royalty income that I make, that's generated from all the music that I have out there, and I've got, probably about 1,500 pieces of music, that are being played, globally, on television, and the streaming income is ridiculously low.
Artists, producers, instrumentalists, and creatives, talking to musicians of all kind. This is a conversation with Josh Heineman, a great friend and composer who's worked with studios like HBO, NBC, ESPN, Smithsonian, and a long list of others. His 30-plus years of experience makes him a treasure trove of valuable information on how younger artists can enter this elusive industry and thrive rather than struggle. This is Brandon Otis with the Hear That Music podcast. To support us, leave a like, comment, and share this with anyone it may help or may enjoy it. Subscribe if you'd like to hear more, or join our newsletter at hearthatmusic.com. So I think the point, or one of the major points of this conversation, is to let artists know that there are other avenues besides what they see in mainstream media.
Right.
You're a composer.
Right.
And I have a long list of shows that you've worked on and documentary films. In your opinion, why don't you think that artists know to take this kind of route?
Well, it's possible that what they know and what they're striving for is success in the mainstream, and they want to have radio hits, they want to have music videos, they want to be on TV, or it's very sort of driven by what they know, what they understand, what they see, and the work that I do, it's not, nobody knows who I am from the standpoint of I'm not visible. I'm not, it's a much more behind the scenes type of work. Now, there are film composers who are very famous, right? That write, like Hans Zimmer and Thomas Newman and folks like that they get well known over time for the work that they do, but they still probably can walk around unrecognized. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So you think that for these new generation of musicians and artists, it's just more about the fame?
Well, no. I'm saying that could be a reason why they're not looking or seeing this part of the work, right? It's also, it's a slower process. It's not as fast of a process in terms of, meteoric rise to fame type of thing. It's more about building a network, building your skills, being able to learn how to encompass moods, figuring out how to use music to evoke emotion. And that is its own thing, its own skill, its own, set of parameters that take a lot of work to do. That doesn't mean other people can't do them. It just means that you've got to be interested in that facet.
Yeah. And evoking emotions is something that a lot of artists are trying to do today, but they're failing.
Well, no, but I mean, I didn't mean that. It's interesting because I didn't mean that in a way to. There are obviously a lot of artists that are touching emotional, buttons left, right, and center. That's why people listen to music in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's not like they don't have a handle on that. It's just that usually when you're writing for film, it's different in the sense that you're writing over dialogue, right? There's people talking. There's stuff going on. And you have to figure out how to not be in the way, because if you do too much, then you start to obfuscate what's going on. You start to take away from the story, which is the last thing you want to do. You want to enhance the story.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's say you're, a singer or a rapper, your voice is the thing that you use. Now, there's plenty of songs in movies, right? There's plenty of songs. There's plenty of people that are singing in movies, but in those moments, you're either not competing with dialogue, or it's a background. It's a thing that's happening in the background. So it's like from a car radio in a scene, or you walk into a club and there's a song happening on the sound system, right? It's that kind of thing.
So your specialty is evoking emotions and elevating what's being on the screen. It's like when I listen to music nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
when I said that like they lack emotion, it feels like their music is more materialistic. And I do hear a lot of songs that like would suit movies. They could be on TV, they could be in media in
Mm-hmm.
that type of platform, because like they can evoke that emotions. But then you hear a lot of even the mainstream instrumental music that is more instrument heavy and without the vocals, and they're still lacking something.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that music nowadays needs to focus more on being emotion driven rather than...
I mean, I think that the problem with those kinds of blanket statements is that it's subjective. Music is extremely subjective. So what to one person could be something that doesn't feel emotional could be extremely emotional for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really tricky thing to make blanket statements like so-and-so's music is, lacks emotion. I would be more, I would probably be more prone to saying that I don't see the emotion in that particular piece, or I don't feel it. But that does not mean that a large percentage of the population, right, might feel it. It's just like, you have people that say they'll hear a song and they're like, I hate that song. But then there's like a huge quantity of the population that loves that particular song. So tough one. That's a tough one to commit to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and composing for films and media, it is a completely different experience, since I guess you already have a target that you're trying to hit sometimes. Like you'll see the film and you'll feel the emotion that's supposed to be translated from it, and then you have to pull that from it, I'm guessing, in some type of way.
There's that, and then there's also, you're usually working with there's one thing that complicates things is that there are usually several people that are involved that you're working with. So you're usually working with an editor, a director, and a producer. There's usually three major sort of, factions that you've got to navigate, right? And the producer is the person who actually has the director and the producer can fire you, right? They can say, we don't like what you're doing, you're out. Usually it's the producer that's paying you, right? So they have even more power than the director. But very often, strangely enough, it's the editor that holds a tremendous amount of power too, because they're giving their opinion about what's working and what isn't. And so my relationship with editors, it becomes extremely important, because the editor can make or break your delivery. In other words, if you can't get along with an editor, it's very difficult to get through a project because they can make your life miserable. So I try to be cooperative, and that's the other thing too. Is I think that one thing I learned working for a particular music supervisor that I've worked for about 20 years is that he was very brash with his comments. He would make me do revisions. So I would write a piece of music and he would be very specific about what had to go. He'd be like, get rid of this, get rid of that, get rid of that. And he wasn't nice about it. Like, he wasn't like, oh, I really, I like that guitar line in there, but it's not going to get as much use if you get rid of it. He was brutal about it. And I learned to not take things personally, so that when work gets questioned, I'm okay with figuring out a way to alter it, change it, get rid of stuff, change the direction completely. And that's also often what happens working with directors and editors, is that I'll take it a certain direction and then they'll come back at me and they'll be like, this doesn't feel right, That's why there's something called temp music that gets used a lot, which is like temporary music. You probably know about it, where you might have a piece of music from a music library or from a film or from a TV show that they really like, right? And they might use that in a scene to give you the flavor of what they want. And that can be both extremely helpful because it gives you the idea of it, and it can be difficult too, because if they give you a piece from Gladiator, where Hans Zimmer used a 150-piece live orchestra with, and you look at the credits, and there's 150 people working in the orchestra, and then there's people working as audio engineers, the librarians, the people that are editing. There's so many people working on it, and you're there by yourself trying to replicate a huge sound like that. That can be tough.
Yeah. It's interesting how music being a team sport always comes back around. Because even if you're not a traditional music maker, like, and making songs that will be on the radio or something like that, like, you still have to work with editors, and you have to work with 3 other people, and 2 of them don't even they don't even have to do music or work in music, right? They're just judging the music,
right? They don't care what you have to do to produce the results. They just want the results, right? They want it to feel a certain way. And it's up to you to figure out how to do that with whatever budget you have. And that's another thing too, is that with computers and the use of computers, you're able to do a lot of remarkably great sounding stuff, but there's no substitute for the real thing. Like, I did a film recently called The 5 Faces of Romanian Identity, and I was given a budget where I was able to hire 18 live musicians, a string section and a rhythm section, and a bunch of different players that I was able to use, and it just makes all the difference to have real musicians working on stuff. So
yeah, and they can even throw their own flavor onto the things
they do exactly that. They do exactly that. They help you by you come to it with a certain thought, like I'm looking for this, and if you're able to write down what it is that you're looking for in terms of the notes of the music, the phrasing, the way you want it to sound, and then they kind of go, well, this is cool, but check this out. What if I enhance it here? or what if I change this note slightly here and do this, and inevitably it winds up taking on a life of its own, and that's where the excitement happens.
Yeah. Yeah, even so much as like the distance from the microphone.
Sure.
And how aggressively they play.
That's right.
Like, I think that artists can learn a lot if they tried to compose songs from or over their favorite pieces of media. I see a lot of things on Instagram of people going viral doing that. Yeah, doing just that, composing songs and putting them over clips from like Breaking Bad and stuff like that. But those type of artists that actually take that plunge into trying to absorb all the emotion that they really want to translate in the music, it seems like their music goes up another level.
Absolutely.
And
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just it's just like it's a producer's game. And it seems like the top producers can compose music in whatever way they want, and they're able to translate whatever type of emotion they want. So it's just a field that everybody should dip their toe into, at least in some sense.
Sure.
It would at least help their music. I think we might want to go over some of these films that you've helped in TV shows: NBC, Fox, HBO, ABC, CBS, Showtime, Nat Geo, VH1, Animal Planet, Smithsonian. What did it take to get to this point?
Well, I think that a lot of that work, a lot of the television show work, started, if you flip the page, you'll see at the bottom on the other side was a bunch of reality TV that was kind of, in the beginning of my writing career, I started writing jingles and writing, music for commercials. And so I had car spots and things like that. And that was interesting because what it forced you to be very focused on whatever the story was being told in a very short quantity of time, in a condensed period of time. So 30 seconds. You had 30 seconds to tell us to get through a story. And very often, to get a musical idea out and make it work in a short period of time, that constraint forces you to think very carefully about tempo. What tempo am I going to use that'll allow me to get my idea out? What's the gist of it? And that helped a lot initially in terms of being able to do stuff for television. And then it was about studying that music, studying that genre, understanding what that music did. And I remember at the time Survivor had started, and there was a composer named John Vanacore who did the music for Survivor, and he kind of started a trend, of a type of music that worked really well for TV. And so I spent a lot of time listening to that, trying to understand where the cadences were, where the high points were, where the low points were, where there was space, where you gave space, where you built tension. And a lot of that stuff becomes part of your vocabulary. It's like a language that you learn to speak. And the longer you do it, the more expressive you are, the more subtle your language structure becomes, So so there was that. That was very helpful. And then I got opportunities to write for a couple of shows, and that helped. That helped a lot, because when you're in it and you're doing it, and you're facing it every day, and then people are asking for revisions because this isn't working well, that build isn't working well, or change this is too busy. One of the things that I've always struggled with is doing too much. Like, I always want to put too many parts in. And I think somebody said to me, if you're writing for TV or film and you have more than and this is a gross generalization, but they were saying, if you have more than 3 or 4 things going on at once, you got too much going on. And what happens is, if you do too much underneath a scene, whoever's mixing the scene in post-production realizes that it's fighting, and they just turn it down to the point where you can't hear it anymore. Mm-hmm. At which point, then you learn your lesson, right? It's like, oh, I was too busy. It didn't work. So that's why they undermixed the music and made it really, really soft, because there was too much going on. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I'm not sure if I answered your question, but
no, the question was how you got to that point, but I think you might have answered it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like my particular path was a mixture of writing production music where I didn't know where the music would wind up being. Right? It would be like, okay, this is you're tasked with writing a bunch of tension-producing music that's going to make people anxious, that's going to make people worried, where they don't know what the outcome is, mm-hmm. and they're anticipating something, they're not sure what it is, and you're tasked to write stuff like that. Or you're tasked to write music that builds. So it starts out very subtle and then it gets busier and busier. Or you're tasked to write stuff that drives, that's very sports oriented. I did a lot of sports music. So mm-hmm. a lot of stuff that was, specifically meant to drive the stuff forward. And I was lucky enough to have a music supervisor who I did a lot of this work for. I had several that I worked for, but one in particular was really helpful from the standpoint that he had a lot of pipeline. He had a lot of shows in the pipeline. So he would say, "Hey, write me a disc that at the time it was CDs they were putting out. Now it's not. Now it's all online." Music libraries where you just download the stuff. But at the time, it was before downloads. It was we would produce CDs, and the CDs would get shipped out to producers, and then that's how they would get a hold of the music mm-hmm. and put it into their edits, either through hard drives or CDs, and then later on it just translated into downloads. But the point was that he would say, okay, produce some music for me. He would give me a genre, be tension, let's say, and he would say, give me 10 or 12 of these tracks. So I would start working on that, and I'd get 4 or 5 deep into it, and he'd call me up. He'd go, where's that disc? Where's that tension disc? I'd be like, dude, you called me like 10 days ago for this thing. I got 4 pieces. I got 5 pieces, done, but I'm still, I'm only halfway through it. He was like, well, hurry up and get it done, because I got this show, and this show that, that I want to get the stuff into. And then he would take that stuff and feed it before it was released. And he did that regularly. And so that really helped me, because it put music on the air before I was even done with a disc. He would already be placing it, which is the key, is to have people that can help you place your music on TV. Because if you don't have that, you can write a lot of great stuff and it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, similar to our last podcast where we talked about publicists and how artists definitely need publicists. Okay. Yeah, it might be a different ballpark. Like doing it for media and it being placements, but
it's very similar. It's a very similar idea, though, right?
Yeah, it's very similar. Artists always will need somebody to help them push their music out, but
Right.
it also just seems like artists don't know how to get into this field of being a composer or working in media at all. How do you think that producers nowadays should join this field?
Well, I think that a lot of this it's like anything else. How are they getting their music on Spotify? How are they getting their music onto playlists? How are they getting their music on the radio or on, wherever it is that they're getting, wherever their outlets are? It's usually through a network of people that they know. And this is the same thing. It's about building a network of folks that trust you. And that's really the key issue is, it's about, I had a person say to me a long time ago, and it's a common thing, people have heard it many times, but it says, success equals when preparation meets opportunity, right? I'm sure you've heard it before. And it's a very simple concept, but it is extremely helpful to people. And that's the thing. It's like at the moment that you meet a person that could change your life, right? If you don't have the goods to prove to that person that you can deliver what it is they're looking for, then the opportunity is lost. So you have to be ready. You have to have the goods. You have to have the music to prove you can do something. So the first thing I think is understanding what you need to be able to deliver on a project, and it could be a short film, it could be, and I think now with the amount of content that there is out there, with the amount of content creation that there is, there's definitely, there are opportunities left, right, and center. It's just understanding what's needed for those things. Am I answering that for you, or?
Yeah. It's just artists need to find the right group of people that are making music in the sense that they want to make music also. It's difficult for people in younger generations nowadays because all they have really is online and like websites like Indeed and stuff like that, where they have to just go and search.
I'm not familiar with that website.
Oh yeah, Indeed is just a website where people post jobs.
Okay.
And like younger people will go on and they'll apply for the jobs there and stuff like that, send their resume over.
Okay.
And things like those, like, you can go on and you can search up production jobs and all that, but then you have to apply and you might not even get the job. Right. And it's just artists are facing a lot more struggles than they used to face, or maybe not used to face, because I don't know what they normally had to go through, but they can't just walk up to people in like a social situation anymore and just say, hey, I do this, or at least it's not something that normally happens. So it's joining this type of industry. It might be hard for artists to accomplish, but it's something that they need to look into, because so many smaller artists are just uploading their productions onto things like SoundCloud and never getting the amount of plays that they should.
Right.
But some do have the connections that would get their music in placements. And then they're the ones that are just looking to find the way to get their music in placements.
Well, so one thing I think would be to figure out who's placing this music, right? That's the thing. So, and we're probably talking about two different things, because one thing is scoring to picture, which is a skill in and of itself that you need to develop like anything else. It's like being, a good lyricist, a good rapper, a good songwriter. Those are all skills that, it takes work to do that. You work your skills. But there are opportunities for people to get their songs placed in TV and film, but it takes, a relationship with a music supervisor who is somebody who you contact and say, hey, I've got this tune, or I've got this song, or I've got this this track that I think would work really well, in film and TV. How do you get to that person and get listened to? That's the issue, and it's trial and error. You have to contact people until you get somebody who is willing to give you a shot, and there may be a bunch of rejection in that process. That may happen. You may not immediately find that person. It may take a little while, but persistence will help, and not taking things personally will help as well. Meaning that just because a person doesn't get back to you, or just because a person rejects you, doesn't mean your work is bad. It just means that that particular person didn't like it. Like we talked about before.
Or they just didn't see it.
Or they didn't see it. Exactly.
Yeah, people make assumptions.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's also, wait, what was I about to say? What was I about to say? I'm not sure. Because that assumptions thing's got me. Because people do make so many assumptions. They assume that, they assume that music supervisors don't exist. I guarantee you most new artists starting out that are younger than me, in their 20s, they don't know what a music supervisor is.
Right.
That they can get help with their music.
Right.
Like it's like, just like publicists almost.
Sure.
But it's about building a network and building a team.
Right.
Can't do it alone.
It's true.
But building a team is also like a really stressful process, and working with a team is a stressful process. Do you have any one in particular that was like the most memorable in terms of like, I would never do that again?
I think that the relationships that I've built with people, that I've worked with have gone the opposite direction. I've got really good relationships with a lot of people, and I've luckily had very good experiences with most of the folks I've worked with. There was one in particular that was a person that was that falls under that category, and it was a person who just didn't have a good moral compass, and they were working on ripping me off. They were working on stealing my music and claiming that they wrote stuff that they didn't write, and taking credit for stuff that, I should have had. And it was about contracts, and me signing contracts that I hadn't really fully understood what I was signing. And usually those lessons are lessons that happen once. And you learn to read every single word of contracts, and at least understand, at least if you decide that you're going to sign something, know what you're signing. Lawyers are very expensive, In my experience, they are, above what I can afford very often. So what I've learned to do is read and understand legalese, and if you look at a lot of contracts, they're written in legal language that very often obfuscates its meaning to the common layperson. They're not written to be easily understood by the layperson, and so you have to kind of read them enough and ask questions enough to people in the know to figure out what those contracts, are actually talking about. And so that's something that I've worked. And then I have a lawyer that I can call and say, hey, I understand paragraphs A through X, but could you please look at Z, because I'm misinterpreting this, I believe, and I think it's saying this, this, and this, but I'm not sure. Could you tell me what X says? And then that person, for a fee, will read that thing and say, what this means is you're giving away the rights to this in perpetuity, and you have no recourse if they want to use it on whatever they want to use it on. And it's up to you at that point to say, okay, this is not good. I don't like this, but I need the job. I need the work. And so I'm willing to go in with my eyes open and understand that these people can use this music in perpetuity on whatever they want, and I'll make no money on it in these different areas, but I will make money on it in a public performance. For an example would be where the person that you're writing for owns the publishing. They take ownership of the publishing of the piece of music you wrote, and they have the right to place that music in a video game and not pay you for that. So you get paid when that music goes on TV. You get paid a public performance royalty, but you don't get paid when the music gets used in the video game. That's an example, right? And so it's important to understand what those concessions that you're making are, and then make an informed decision and decide at the time, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to sign that contract because that's not right, and I'm not going to do that. So then what you do is you send the contract back, you X out the paragraph that you want to get rid of. In my experience, what it's been, the way it's been is that it's like, well, okay, if you're not going to sign that, then we'll find somebody else to do this job. That's usually where it is, where it's ended up. So there was one person that I worked with. There's a very long-winded answer here, that I would not work with again. But by and large, most of the people that I've worked with, I'm still working with to this day. And then if you want to talk about team, we can talk about team.
What about team?
Well, I think it's important. Now, the issues that when you look at a film score that's being done on like the Hollywood level, the budgets are big enough that when you look at the credits for those films, the budgets are big enough that there's money to go around to handle a lot of different aspects of the score, right? You'll have a composer, an assistant, you'll have a conductor, you'll have an orchestra, you'll have a audio engineer who's the senior audio engineer who's responsible for the recording of all of the score. Then you have several assistant engineers usually that are assisting in that process. You'll have a music editor who plays a very functional and pivotal role, because what they do is they help take cues and shorten them, lengthen them. They'll repurpose cues so that if there's a cut that comes in that's different than it was 2 days ago, and you realize that there's a piece that's no longer working for a particular piece because the director or the editor has decided it's not working, they can then take that piece that wasn't working for that scene and they can put it into another scene. Mm-hmm. And to have an editor who's thinking about that, who's doing that for you, saves a lot of time, right? The budgets that I'm in I don't have that luxury. I'm very often wearing all those hats, right? I'm like the cook and bottle washer, I'm doing it all. But in the rare moments when I have the privilege of working with people, like on my last score that I did in April of last year for the Romanian film, I had a recording studio that I hired with an engineer friend of mine named Randy Crafton, who's an amazing engineer and producer and musician in his own right, exceptional engineer. And he's built a studio in Union City, New Jersey, called Kaleidoscope Sound that is amazing, an amazing facility. And he has a incredible young engineer that he has trained who works with him there. And that is a person, a member of my team that is indispensable. That's somebody that elevates my music to the next level. There's just no question about it. He understands mic placement. And first of all, he's got a collection of vintage mics and vintage audio gear, consoles, processing gear, etc. And he not only understands the mic placement and mic positioning, but also the types of mics that are right for each different instrument. So he's got all of that covered and keeps the stuff in incredibly good condition. So there's no buzzes and hums and things like that you would normally associate with old equipment, right? Which is part of the deal. And that coupled with the musicians that I know and was able to hire wound up giving me a score that I'm really super proud of,
I think artists underestimate how much working with other musicians can affect their music. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are making music just in their bedrooms alone. Mm-hmm. And they feel like they can get a full piece out of that. But while they can get like a full piece that they can call a complete song, mm-hmm. if they give it to another person, that song can become something completely different, or it can level up in the way that you were looking for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, music used to be a social experience. If you wanted to cut, a record in the old days, you had someone playing bass, you had someone mm-hmm. playing drums, you had someone playing guitar, you had someone playing keyboards, you had different people singing, you had a group of singers that were your background vocalists. You weren't just singing all the background vocals yourself, for example. And it's that variation in timbre and variation in individual subtlety that each different musician brought to the picture that made a big difference. So yeah, I'm always in favor of that. And basically what I'll do for my clients is I'll say, hey, I'll give them 3 different budgets. I'll say, budget A is me with a computer, and I'll play certain instruments live. Like I'll play some vibraphone or some I'll sample some special sounds that I'll create myself, and I'll try to make it as interesting and authentic and strange and weird as I can. But it's just me with a computer and my tools, my instruments, etc. The next level is me with, let's say, 5 select musicians. And I'm working with people that have their own setups, their own studios at home, and they'll contribute. They'll play whatever their instrument is, and I might have a woodwind player that plays flute, clarinet, bass clarinet, saxophones, and maybe some assorted percussion, for example. I don't know. And that person will give me their flavors. Then I'll have 2 or 3 different guitar players that I'll use, and they all have different things that they do. One plays ukulele really well and acoustic guitars beautifully. The other plays electric guitars beautifully, etc. And I'll mix and match and do stuff like that. So that'll be the second budget, which will be me plus 5 musicians. And then the third budget is, me with a small string section going into the studio. I set 3 or 4 days of recording time, and then I schedule everybody in. I've got to have all the music written, all the music prepared. I have to have a final cut by that point, right? Because I don't want to be, changing. The cut has to be done at that point. It has to be locked, and then, then I go from there. And that's what I did with this last film, and it was a great experience for me, and I think also for the people that I worked with, because I was able to pay them well for their work and respect their work, and that social aspect of music making wasn't lost in that particular case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just a completely different thing than just making a song to make a song.
Mm-hmm.
It's composition is definitely an underrated aspect of the music industry, and I think that it's underappreciated for the most part. But you also talked a lot about studios and like home studios, and earlier you said that you work as a consultant and build studios. How important is it for artists nowadays to have home studios?
Well, I mean, what's beautiful about the modern technology that we have at our disposal is the fact that, it kind of democratizes, it democratizes the industry in a sense, because a 13-year-old kid who's, got talent can, put stuff out that sounds amazing, using these tools. And so it's opening the door for people to express themselves in ways that they normally wouldn't have been able to do because of the technology. The thing that potentially gets lost is that when you have a person who's dedicated their lives to sound capture, an audio engineer who has refined and perfected their craft of capturing a sound, it's very difficult to get a vocal recording that's going to be on the same level, from your home studio when someone's in the background flushing a toilet or walking across the, when someone's whatever. I mean, it's just like, you don't have a soundproof room to work in, so you're dealing with buzzes and hums from refrigerators and air conditioning systems, what have you, or cars driving by. It's not the same as working in a studio where, the rooms are soundproofed and they're acoustically treated to sound good. You know what I mean? So it's, but it's been, so I think that working with a great studio, having the privilege to do that, it's, I always feel so good because I can focus on the music making and let somebody else worry about the sound quality. And if they're good, I don't have to worry about it. Now, that doesn't mean that I won't, be critical about the way something sounds or the way something was, but then it becomes more about what was played. It becomes more about the performance. Was the performance right? You're not worrying so much about the little things, like whether there was a crackle on the mic or something. Obviously, you know, you want to avoid things like, you know, technical glitches and things like that. You know, you've got to be careful and keep your ear open for that stuff. But when you have somebody else worrying about that, then it takes a lot of pressure off of you. The other thing that I did was I hired a young composer that has worked for me a lot, and he wound up doing all of my score preparation, and that was incredibly vital because he wrote out everything for all the musicians. He uses a computer program that's very good and renders music in a very beautiful way, so that it's very easy to read and stuff like that. But he was tremendously instrumental in making sure that my sessions went well. And another vitally important member of the team, his name is Elliot Chamberlain. He's an excellent composer himself. And I met him. I was doing a lecture at University of Maryland for a bunch of young composers that were there, and I had brought, you know, some of my stuff that I had done and was talking about writing music for television. And he was there, and he was just really enthusiastic and cool, and we stayed in touch. And I'm working. I still work with him to this day, and that was, I don't know, 15 years ago or something like that, you know.
Yeah, people need to seek out more talks and events like that, even if they have to go to a school to do it, because that's exactly where you'll find somebody that can help you reach the point that you were trying to reach, or even introduce you to a different side of the music industry that you never knew was possible.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because we met and we stayed in touch, and I kind of mentored him. You know, I stayed in touch with him. He would send me pieces that he was working on, and I would give him very, what's the word? Detailed analysis from my point of view of what I heard. And a lot of this stuff is about trying to sound real. A lot of the work as a composer that we're doing now is trying to make orchestral scores that sound like the real thing, and it's tricky. It's tricky. It's not easy to do it. Although the software keeps getting better and better, you still have to compare and contrast and listen to what real scores with real orchestras sound like to try to replicate those sounds. And it takes work, it takes effort.
Yeah, I think it'll always come up, the intersection between music and technology and how it's changing the landscape. It's not only changing the way music sounds and the way music is made, but how musicians interact with each other.
It's true.
Which is kind of crazy.
It's true.
Yeah, I wish there was easier ways for people to actually just make music together.
Yeah.
Rather than
yeah. I mean, it does seem like there's the social aspect of music making, it is something that I miss, playing with other people, and so that's something that I'm working on, trying to, make some time to play with actual players, actual musicians, Yeah.
So you also have a lot of other projects going on. Can you talk about some of those?
You mean in terms of music, or?
Yeah, you make your own music from time to time still?
Yeah, I mean, of late I'm working on playing the piano and just sort of, reimagining my relationship with the piano, which sort of sounds weird, but it's about giving myself the permission to explore and make mistakes and not be judgmental about it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a really cool kind of recent awakening, you know, like having the feeling that it's okay to slow down and to just hear things in a different way, in a new light, experiment with different chord progressions and different melodic concepts. And so that's been kind of like a personal moment, personal journey. I actually have been taking a break from writing the production music. That I've been doing it steadily for a long time, longer than I'm comfortable admitting. And I just felt like I was stagnating a bit, like I was writing the same kind of thing over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt like, you know what, I need some time away from it, you know? So,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, it's important that making music doesn't feel like a job from time to time. Like, it has to feel like something you enjoy to do. If you don't enjoy it, the music's not going to come out well.
Of course not. Yeah. There's a person, the guy that actually gave me my first break, his name is Doug Wood. Was just a beautiful human being and someone who I care deeply for, and great musician himself. He ran a very successful business for many years. He had a company called Omni Music that I wrote a lot of music for, and he licensed a lot of music through that, and then he sold the company a number of years back. And he always said, I can hear in your music that you're having fun, you know, which is it was a wonderful compliment. You know, he would say that I can tell when someone's having a good time writing and a good time doing it. You know, you hear it in the end result. And so that was cool. And I do think there is an element of that if you're not enjoying it, if you're stressing out about it, it's going to show. On the other hand, you know, the reality of the business is that sometimes it's work, man. Sometimes you're looking at, you know, like when I did the series, it was 6 episodes of 54 minutes in length that had to be covered. You know, 54 minutes of music, that's a lot of music to write, you know? And if you have a deadline looming and you're behind, it can be very stressful. There's a very famous composer named Danny Elfman, who you may know. Look him up. He's incredible. I mean, you know, among hundreds of scores, the thing that he's probably best known for is the theme to The Simpsons.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you look up Danny Elfman, you'll see he's written incredible scores, one after the other. Just an amazing musician and writer. And he has a master class on that website, Masterclass, that I highly recommend for anybody who's interested in film composition. And he talked about how he organizes his time. And he basically divides up the amount of time that he has left. So if he has 2 months left, you know, from the beginning of the time he gets a project to the deadline, he takes a calendar and he divides up the amount of music he's got to write by the amount of days he has left. So if he has to write 2 minutes of music a day, that's what he does. He writes 2 minutes of music a day. And if he gets to day 5 and he only wrote 1 minute of music, then day 6 he's got to write 3 minutes, et cetera, et cetera. Now, of course, it's like, you know, sometimes there's compression and expansion depending on what happens. But that was extremely helpful to me. And I saw how he actually, on a whiteboard, he kind of, delineated all of the times that he needed and divided it by the amount of days he had left. And it was really cool the way he thought about it.
Yeah, time management
exactly
is a very important thing that people lack nowadays. And it's crazy how every little part of the management system will bubble up once you start working with a team and stop working on your own. Like, people will give themselves months to make an album at times, but you said that you had 6 episodes and they were all above 50 minutes. That's like making 6 albums.
It was a lot. I had about 8 months to get through that. So it wasn't like it was 6 episodes in a month or 2 months. So, and it was during the pandemic. So there was nothing else really going on at the time. The timing of it was fantastic for me. But yeah, it's a lot, and it can be daunting, if you look at it that way. What I did do is I decided that I would have, certain themes that I used for certain different elements of the war, and that helped because I would use the themes and do themes and variations and sort of vary stuff, but I used a lot of the material throughout so that it also felt like it was the same series, right? I wanted the music to feel like it was cohesive, and that it wasn't completely disparate.
And with all these different shows that you work on, you end up building a library of your own, right?
So, well, the problem with that is that in certain cases, if I were able to do that, I would have a vast library, okay? But when you work for, it depends who you work for, and it depends how the deal is structured. In what I like to do now is I share the publishing with the producer that I'm working with, 50-50, and then I own the writer's share. So I don't know if you know about this, but every piece of music is divided into 2 halves. There's the writer's share and there's the publisher's share. And you, as the writer, can be the publisher and then you own all of it, right? But what I've found is that, especially when it comes to foreign usage and foreign rights, if you don't have somebody that has skin in the game and you want to go after, let's say, when something was played, what were the air dates? Can you help me look through this and find it? If that person doesn't have interest and monetary interest in it, why will they help you? Why will they help you, especially 2 years later when they're busy with other stuff? If they own half that money, the chances are that they're going to be much more willing to help you. Make sense?
It makes complete sense. There's just so many different opportunities to make money in the industry in different ways that aren't the mainstream way. And I just hope that people understand that, especially after a conversation like this. Do you have, what is your opinion on the music industry today?
Well, strangely enough, I'm really not as current as I should be. You know what I mean? Like my ear is not to the street the way it should be, because I'm more focused on just the work I'm doing. So, very often that kind of excludes a lot of it. So I'm not as well versed with the music industry today as I probably should be, embarrassingly enough. but it's the truth. So, but it seems to be thriving. There seems to be a lot of people doing very well, right?
In ways, I think that there are groups of people that are doing well, but they know how to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the music industry should be something where people have to know how to play the game. I think it should probably be easier for people, especially since like there are people that are so talented that are making music, but they don't know the business side. And they'll upload their music to Spotify and they'll get paid like $0.00033 per play, and they have to go above 30 seconds to even get that.
Yeah, no, there's for sure like the aspect of the streaming, like I'll tell you what, in terms of my royalty income that I make that's generated from all the music that I have out there, and I've got, probably about 1,500 pieces of music, that are being played, globally, on television. And, the streaming income is ridiculously low, like ridiculously low. What I get paid for a show that's on Netflix, the residuals that I get paid on Netflix is like pennies. Whereas if I'm get played on terrestrial television, if I get paid on CBS or NBC or Fox, it's real money. It's money that a composer could make a living on. And I think that is unfair and sad that people's work isn't appreciated, in that way. And I hope that, some changes will be made in terms of, streaming income. Even 1 decimal point over, right now it's about, maybe for every minute played, you get a cent, 1 cent for stuff that's on Amazon, Netflix, Disney, Hulu, whatever, you name it. All those streaming services, probably about 1 cent per minute. If it were 10 cents a minute, I would be making a lot. I would be making an actual, I would be able to do nothing else but do that. You know what I mean? So we'll see where that all goes.
And that's the crazy thing, is it only takes a decibel or like 10 cents to actually change that. Right. And then the people who actually deserve high payment of their streaming services will actually get it because they deserve it. I mean, even not necessarily a high payment, but a living wage would be nice, Yeah.
And that seems more difficult to attain under these circumstances. So, you have to look for other opportunities. You have to figure out, where can you get paid? How can you get paid? Where can you get paid enough money to make it worth your while to do it and to be able, because part of the problem too is that, you have to, part of the problem about being an artist is that it's very difficult to be artistic when you can't pay the bills. And my heart goes out to artists who, are having trouble doing that. When you're worried about the lights going off or whatever, it's hard to, that's why a lot of artists have to go take other gigs. They can't write or produce or whatever full time because they've got to, figure out a way of making money. Now, it's not to be said that it can't happen. And I think there are a lot of people that are figuring out ways to do it. It takes ingenuity, it takes innovation, it takes relentless, persistence, and the ability to not take things personally, and figure out a way, make a niche for yourself, get good at something, and find the people that need what you have to offer. It's tricky, it's tough, but it's doable.
Do you have any last advice for people before these cameras die?
Well, it's advice I think that I myself need to learn and have spent a lifetime learning. I think that, I was just watching the Conor McGregor special on Netflix, and I'm struck by the guy's ability. His work ethic is just insane, and his belief in himself is insane. Like, I was telling my wife yesterday that if I had 10% of the belief in myself that he has, I would be 100 times more successful than I am. So I think, I believe that you have to believe in yourself. You have to have the goods, obviously, right? You have to be able to deliver the goods. That's the first thing. Like, you have to have either talent or skills or ability or something that separates you, something that makes you unique or different or marketable in some way, shape, or form. And then you have to have the belief in yourself, which is something I've honestly struggled with, my whole life. And it's tough. And I mean, I've got a resume that, you look at the amount of work I've done, you would think, oh, this dude believes in himself. But that's something I'm struggling with, and that's something I have to work on. So I would say belief in yourself, get, preparation meets opportunity. So you have to have goods. You have to have the goods to deliver. That's super important. Believing in yourself, and then not being afraid to reach out to people and show them what you got.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
That's definitely good advice. People are definitely lacking that belief in themselves to take that jump.
Right.
Where can people find your most recent work and some of your handles, maybe if they want to contact you to work with you?
So I've got my stuff up on Disco, on the Disco site. Maybe we could put the links in the... Can we put the links in the thing?
Links will be in the description below.
Great, yeah. So they can reach me there, and they can listen to some stuff that I've done there. And that'd be great.
Okay, and what was the last work you did that they can listen to?
If they go to Amazon, they can watch the World War II series in color on Smithsonian. That's 6 episodes is there. And if they watch the Bill Russell documentary on Netflix, I've got some music in there as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, man. I'm sure this conversation will help out a lot of people, especially if they actually pay attention to the composition.
And I'll be, anybody who reaches out, I'll follow through.
All right.
So, thanks, man.
All right, let's get out of here.